So this week on, cheers, welcome to my job. So on this week's episode of the AVB Podcast, I have come all the way up here to beautiful northern Michigan to sit down with, I guess infamous might be the way to go with this one when it comes to Windsor, but a very well-known name. Can't wait for this conversation. Mr. Ted Boomer, how you doing, man?
Good, AJ. Good to see you. Thanks for coming up.
Oh, yeah, no.
Thanks for bringing the snow.
Hey, in my defense, it was here before I got here.
You're right.
This is, I'm very excited about this conversation. You and I have sat down one other time prior to this just to kind of meet each other. But your name is one of those names that, doing what I do, talking about music and entertainment in Windsor, your name is one that has come up probably more than any other individual in the scene.
I'm old. I'm old.
And you've had your hands in a lot of different things. Let's start the way we always do from the very, very beginning. Tell me about the house you grew up in. Tell me about mom and dad.
Lived 1700 block, 1766 Arthur Road. Great blue-collar neighborhood. Every other house was World War II vets. I think we had 100 kids on our street. We were a pack of wolves. But great. I mean, it's funny, years later, I've still got 2 or 3 friends that I've known 50-some years. And it was a great neighborhood. Went to David Maxwell. Had some good teachers there. And then over to Herman. And it was kind of the heyday for sports for Herman because we had... we won the Canadian Championship twice. We had a really good hockey team. We had some great teachers. Sam Sisko was our hockey coach, and Mr. Akins, who used to play for Chicago Cubs, as a pitcher, and Godfrey Janice, who was a legend. And, you know, it was just, we had a great music teacher. We drove him insane. I think he went through thousands of dollars a week in value. I think back at it, we were cruel. We were absolutely, we drove him nuts. But we had a great band, and it was just great. It was really good. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she used to do she was artsy. She would decoupage and all the stuff. She used to teach part-time doing that. My dad was, he was all over the map. He was heavyweight champion of Canada, and then the war breaks out. And he happened to go through the tunnel. He's from Bradford. And my grandfather he was born in Hamilton, so my grandfather was a wealthy farmer until the Depression hit. He had 7 farms, so you know the bank, they grabbed 6 of them. And they give him the smallest farm. Well, the farm's here, and there's the fence, and there's 6 nations. So my dad grew up with thousands and thousands. He was like the only white boy on the reserve. So lacrosse, he was on the Canadian national lacrosse team in 36, 37. Who invented wrestling? The natives. So the old man was, you know, if you're the only Irish guy at an English school, you got to fight. If you're the only white guy at a black school, you're going to have to fight, right? If you're the only Arab at a Jewish school, you're going to have to learn how to fight.
Right.
You're the oddball. So the old man learned how to fight, and but he got through the border in 39, you know, because they were wrestling in the States. All their money was in California, New York, or Texas. That was the big markets, and they would do, you know, the tobacco. They would do all the state the fairs and stuff. Montreal and Toronto were big, of course, but
like fighting fairs, like this is boxing.
Well, he boxed too, but he was wrestling, and they
wrestling,
right. And he got through the border at 39. He was up, you know, he had a green card to work the States because that's where all the money was, and this is way before TV stars and all that. And he comes through the border.
So wait a second, this is like pro wrestling.
Oh yeah, he's pro. He was
we're talking like WWE pro wrestling kind of thing. Okay.
He was a Canadian champion.
Okay.
And I mean, he was on a Hudson Bay. You know, he was on the front of their magazines, and he was a big star for a couple of years. And then the war breaks out, and he's in Windsor, coming through the tunnel, going home to Brantford. Because they'd be on the road for 3 months.
Right.
And they pull him in. They never pulled him in. He's being interviewed by the customs guy. You know, what are you doing? Well, working in the States. He pulls out his green card, and the guy rips it up. The old man's like shaking, like, without that, I can't make a living.
Right.
80% of our money's in the States. Well, son, the king's calling all his boys home. The war broke out yesterday. So the old man goes, what am I going to do now? He says, see that building there? It's like 100 feet away. That's the armory. He says, you're a big tough guy. Go fight the Germans.
Get the fuck out of here.
So he walks down the street. 5 minutes later, he's in the army. And it was such a pain in the ass, they made him the sergeant. He was a sergeant major, and they gave him he had 3 Canadian champs. He was such a problem that, you think the army's dumb? They're
right.
smart. this guy's such a pain in the ass. We'll give him 300 guys to take care of, and they're all nuts as him. So he had to be on his P's and Q's. He was like it was crazy, and that's how he ended up in Windsor. And our family was originally from Brantford or Kingston.
So that's it's really interesting to me. I want to sort of pin this down. This is right before the war, so we're talking 39, 40, right? And he's a professional. Like at the time, that's almost like fair work, right?
Yeah, they were
it's traveling roadshow stuff.
Oh, just like the musicians that would put up a tent, and that was, and the Baptist ministers. It was all tent work, and they would play arenas and stuff in the big cities.
So how far along after that do you end up coming along?
15 after the war.
Right.
My dad comes back after the war, and he was married at the time. He got married, then went over to England for 5 years or whatever. And my 4 uncles were all World War II vets. So he came back to war, but and it was crazy back then. You think back, my uncle was the first one back, and he told my mom my dad was killed. And so she's already mourning him, and 2 weeks later he shows up at the vet's hospital in London. He had a broken back, so he was on a slab for 8 months. So needless to say, my mom never talked to my uncle the rest of her life. But my uncle was like the Bourne movie.
Right.
He was that guy. He was the assassin.
Really?
Parachutes, killed the German shepherds, chop off the guy's head, swim. Oh yeah, like the stuff he did. I think he went through 6 wives before he was a Looney Tune.
Wow.
Now I understand this post-traumatic. We just thought they went over there, all a bunch of Canadian farm boys, and came back raging alcoholics.
Right.
Well, now we know what it is. But back then it's like, can't you stop? Oh, the stuff they saw was, who can even believe it?
That's insane.
So he came back. In fact, he formed a company in his hospital bed. He formed Veteran Cab, and they used to go up and visit him. He was buddies with Art Graham, who was the mayor at the time. So the old man he only had a grade 8 education, but he had instincts, like really instincts. He
was road weary.
He gets the mayor of the city to be his partner, and all of a sudden he cuts through all the red tape.
Right.
And he had a couple partners, and they were all vets back then. They started Vets Cab, and that's how he was a business guy in Windsor, and
And that kind of came from there.
Yeah.
So tell me about growing up in that house. Like, so when you were veterans, does Vets Cab get started before you come around, or while you're?
Oh no, yeah, well, that was 46, and my dad. In fact, I should tell you this because this has never been told before, and this is. There's so much history.
Yeah.
Like family history, but it stays in the family. So Art Graham the town was wide open back then. My dad had cab drivers making $1,000 a week in 1947.
Whew.
That's like 10 grand.
Yeah.
How could that be? Windsor was, Hiram Walkers. No booze in the States in the 30s. It was the bootlegging capital of the world. In fact, they did studies. My uncle's in that book. In the Rum Runner book.
Yeah.
My aunt married Noel Weil. Noel Weil worked for it wasn't even the Windsor Star back then. It was the Border City Press. And the mob had him there in LaSalle. Cement shoes. He wrote a bad article on him. So he was going swimming, but the OPP got to him before he went swimming. So that's how Windsor was. So the cab business was booming, and Art was his partner, but they're all silent partners. And the old man, Art comes up to when my old man was in the hospital and said, I need some muscle because Ford strike's happening, the big Ford strike, and that's where the Rand Act started.
Right.
And this was maybe 10 years after the big Ford strike in the States, where the goons and guys getting thrown. I think there's 4 or 5 guys killed. It was ugly. It was
right.
It was. Oh.
This is the beginning of the union movement.
Yeah. And the busting and the goons and the baseball bats. So they're thinking this same thing's going to happen in Windsor.
Right.
Right. So Art's asked my old man, he needs some muscle. So the old man says, well, obviously I'm in the hospital, but he gets my uncle and gets one of his other guys. Well, my uncle was the youngest tank commander, just a short little Irish Frenchman. And he lost 5 tanks in World War II. One in North Africa, Italy, Sicily, and he was in Holland when they freed Holland, when it was like World War I, trench warfare. And he never got a scratch on him. And that's how I kind of got into history, because when we were kids, we'd be watching the movies, and my uncle owned his own cab, so he'd come by and he'd sit there and watch, and, oh, that's not true. that happened. Yeah, it was like being the, he wasn't at all these wars, but he saw a lot of action.
Right.
So in Holland, when they freed everyone, well, the whole country went crazy, and the Canadians are loved in Holland because they had to airdrop food because they were starving. It was ugly. So the Germans are out. The town throws a big party. So and they hadn't had a drink in probably 6 months. So they can wine and everything. Well, they get 4 or 5 guys in the tank. They get drunk. Let's go off-roading. So they're taking these tanks. Well, he never got a scratch on him, but that day he broke both his hands. So he gets this cushy job as being the Batman for General Rutherford. So he played out the war being, basically the bouncer and the maid, and if the general's drunk, make sure you get him out of the media, So my old man gets my uncle because he knows what to do. So Art's because Art's worried. So Art calls up the premier, the guy running the show.
Right.
And it was, what was his name? He was premier for a long, long time. Anyways, he calls him up and says, you're going to have to send more men. He had 200 OPP in town.
Okay.
He says, we need more. And the premier is asking him, why? Is the strike getting ugly? He says, oh, no, but I figured it all out. There's 20 Walkerville police, and there's 15 or 20 Ford City police, and there's about 150 Windsor police. You're going to need more guys to get to the strikers. So basically, he was saying, our police force is going to fight your police force. And the premier goes, I'll get even with you, you son of slams down the phone. And he did get even because, and the town was wide open back then. All the off-track betting in the world came, the old Norwich block.
Yeah.
Right there. How do you make $1,000 as a cab driver?
Right.
Going to joints. And they're just driving.
Right.
The postie can come up here and there could be 5 pounds of heroin in they don't know. They're the delivery agent, right? So they got rid of Art, and then to get rid of Art, they went after all his business interests. So they come after the old man, because he's got Vets cab. They want to see his records. Well, why would you have 500 trips a week to 1832 Olet Avenue, or all the joints? Well, if he had, so my old man goes to his top lawyer in town, his buddy. What am I going to do? Like, if he hands it over, I mean, this is organized crime, or so he's deadbeat if he's in a rock and a hard place. So the old man, the lawyer says to him, wouldn't it be terrible if there was a terrible accident? He says, where's all your records? Because the OPP came in, they wanted his records. Well, his records are in their office. He said, no, they're at, he just smart enough to say they're not here.
Right.
He's buying time.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what to do because, what does he do? So the old man never went off on Sunday. Went out on Sundays because you got to get up at 5 in the morning and open up the. So he's out at before it was the Top Hat. It was Rosen's Chicken. They had the first liquor license in Windsor. It was right where the Top Hat was.
Yeah.
And Mr. Rosen, he's in there on Sunday night, tipping the waitresses $5 and this and that, and buying drinks for everyone. And then the phone rings, and Mr. Rosen picks it up, and T.I., that was my dad, Teddy I, and T.I., it's your wife. No, you're kidding. Is anyone hurt? Oh, okay, I'll be right home. He picks up the phone. What happened? Well, some guy burned down 7 or 8 garages on my street, and one of them was mine. So on the Monday, the cops come in. We'll get even with you. What's he gonna do? Get out of my office,
Right.
But Art Rhea saved the day. The Ford strike went off without a thing. The OPP went away, but they got even because there was a time where there was no Windsor police. The OPP were running the town after that.
Okay.
And it was Mitch Hepburn was the premier, and he was like a Gestapo guy. He ran the province like an iron fist.
Right.
If you mess with him, it was like messing with Fidel Castro.
What years? What?
That would be 49.
Okay.
49. So my dad basically he knows the writing's on the wall, so he sells out. And then he goes off to his next venture. He goes off to Peely Island and leased the whole island, started drilling for oil, and he hit gas. He went from being worth $3 million on the Toronto Stock Exchange. As soon as he hit gas was like chicken wings back then. You threw them out. Now they're valuable. And he just went. He did all kinds of crazy. He was into mining. He was a mining promoter, and he did all kinds of crazy things.
So what was it like growing up? Because let's kind of lay it out. You just did. Like, there's no hiding it. Dad wasn't against kind of going against the grain.
He was a free-range chicken boy.
Right.
He did. In fact, one of my buddies. This is how crazy he was. But no, they were all nuts. I looked at all my uncles. They weren't nuts. They were nuts for. They didn't have any rules. After you got back from 6 years over there, all they wanted to do is drink, get laid, get a house, raise a family, and nothing else mattered.
Right.
Nothing. They were different people. They were just lucky to be alive, and they just lived their life. They, lived it to the fullest every day.
Right.
And I mean, the cops would never arrest them because half the cops were in his troop. They just got away with murder, but they never broke any laws. They just gambling. My uncle lent my dad $50,000 to open up Vet's Cab because they had a big card game on the Queen Mary when the war was over, before it got into St. John's.
Yeah.
The last man standing. You know this, being a professional. My uncle was really good at pool, all these parlor games. You couldn't beat him at darts. You couldn't beat him at pool.
Right.
And he was a great card player. He was the last man standing. He cleaned out the boat. They didn't sleep for 2.5 days on the trip or whatever it took. And I think my dad gave him some shares. But my uncle basically financed Venture Cab off a card game on the Queen Mary.
Oh my
I mean, how
God.
insane is that?
But it says so much about. Anyway, we'll talk about what it says so much about, because I want to hear more of your story, because at this point that's awesome. We could probably sit here for days and talk about the history of your family. Talk to me about growing up in that house, because Dad wasn't an easy guy. I can tell you that much. Right?
No,
how many brothers and sisters do you have?
2 older sisters, me, and my younger brother Ken.
Okay, so you're the oldest boy in that house, and I get the feeling that might have mattered to Dad.
Yeah. My dad was in and out. My dad was like back then the stock market and the car business was 7 years and crash. 7 years and crash. Now they haven't had a crash, but that's probably when it does crash, it'll be way worse. They're manipulating everything today. The economy's supposed to crash, right? He was a handful, but he was always out. He's in Northern Ontario half his life. He thought outside the box, like during the uranium boom in the 50s and the gold boom and up north of Timmins, Wawa. It was kind of like the gold rush in the late 40s in California. The only people that made money were the people selling shovels and spades.
Right.
The merchants made money, and everyone around the world thought they're all panning for gold, and half of them died of some disease.
Right.
1 out of 1,000. It's like lottery. 1 out of 1,000 is going to win, and everyone else is, I'm losing my shirt on this.
Right.
So he figured out early on, because he was a pro athlete, so he was in good shape, and who would go up north in January when it's 30 below and 15 feet of snow. Well, he bought a half track off the Hudson Bay Company. It was like a tank. You put 4 or 5 people in there, and everyone else is going to, stake a claim. Well, he was up there in January with him, his partner, and an Indian guide, and he would stake out the whole north. So he wasn't panning for gold. He was selling stakes. I own this. You want to buy a stake? So he was selling the shovels.
Gotcha.
And he made a fortune selling pieces of paper because they froze their ass off for 3 months, but made a bundle doing it that way. So I learned, if everyone's running this way, there might be a better way to turn around and run the other way. Like he thought different. Being a white boy, growing up with the natives, he just thought different. He was just a different guy.
He just kind of had a sideways perspective on everything.
Yeah, and he had great common sense, and he was a brilliant guy with a grade 8 education.
So growing up in that house, I get the feeling he wasn't there a lot of the time.
Half the time, no. It was
Yeah.
gone.
So it was just basically raised under mom.
Mom was the best. She
Yeah.
put up with, she was the best. Yeah, she was the greatest.
And you said she was an artist.
She was artsy. My one sister, I think I got my art gene from my one aunt was a bit of a musician, and my sister was a really good musician. She played in the symphony, and when we were kids, I was always in sports, but my mom and dad got my brother and my 2 sisters into cello and violin lessons. And Mr. Armin used to come by. They used to do house calls. And he'd come by, and nothing's worse. Don't let your kids play harmonica. Don't play drums or any violin. It's like scratching a blackboard when you're no good. When you're great, it's beautiful.
Great,
but
yeah.
boy, it's 10 years of torture.
It's a long road to
you're
get to
gonna hurt
great.
some eardrums doing it. So my sister was really good at it, and then she went to Toronto Art School. And when I was a kid, 11, 12 or whatever, I'd go up and visit maybe once or twice a year, take the train up to Toronto. She was living in Rossdale, which was the student housing where it was famous for being the drug center of Canada, probably, and kids were taking LSD and diving out a window. It was like insane. And somehow but she was a beatnik, kind of Jack Kerouac kind of, long hair hippie. But she, we'd go to these little coffee shops because I was like 11 or 12. So you couldn't go to liquor places. So I'd go to Yorkville and that and see somebody playing a guitar and, little kid, big eyes, ooh, ah. I remember one time seeing this girl, she was so pretty, long hair, and boy, she had this voice. And then 5 years later, you're watching CBC. That's Joni Mitchell. So when you're a kid, when you're a kid, you don't even know what you're seeing.
Right.
I remember one time I was in our family. We had an uncle in the States, and they had a big family thing. And my sister, she was older. She had a license, so we went to Eastern Market to pick up the hamburgers and stuff. And I'm waiting for her, loading up the car, and there's this old guy playing on a chair, busking. I remember he had all I remember is his boots and his hat. He just looked like, had a gravelly voice. And years later, John Lee Hooker was busking. So you shouldn't go back and go, this is stupid. I was like, really? And this just happened because back then, John Lee was just a Detroit musician, hadn't hit big on his records, had a weekend off. I mean, sometimes you walk in the bar and you see a star up there because, even if you're a star, you got to make a living. If the band's not touring, you're gigging with another band,
I think what's interesting to me, though, is that, because you were born and raised in Windsor, right? But your stories that you talk about are Toronto and Detroit.
Toronto was the capital of Canada for music, one of the most important music cities in the world back in the 60s.
And I get that, but how did you end up getting, because I know you said Dad traveled a lot and stuff, but did that have to do with Dad? Because it seems to me that would have been an unusual thing for a kid at that time.
Well, my sister was going to school in Toronto.
So you would just kind of...
So twice a year I'd go up and see her.
Okay.
And then later on when I was in university, my wife now, but we were dating, she was in a bank. She was working in a bank in Toronto. Okay. So I was always up in Toronto, and then when I was in university, I was booking bands and doing the odd concert promoting. I had the contract for St. Clair College. I had this great big room.
How did that get started? How did you get involved in music at all as a business?
Well, I started out. I had a full ride scholarship when I was a kid to Bowling Green in the university, so I had a hockey scholarship. Okay. And then I got, I think I was 16, and we were playing Assumption in the finals, and I broke my ankle in like 9 places. Ooh. So I was in a cast for like 2 years up there, and then but another 6 months. And so while I was doing that, like when I was in grade 9, when we were in public school, I played trumpet, and then we get to grade 9, I was playing trumpet. Then I moved over to French horn because the trumpet player who was in grade 12 was like the greatest thing you ever saw in your life. And I'm sitting there going, I could practice my whole life, and I mean, no way. So I played French horn, and then in the orchestra I played upright bass because I used to doodle enough with my sister's violins and stuff. So my dad had a guitar. He knew 3 chords, and he knew every dirty World War II thing. So, we'd have family parties, and he'd bring out the guitar, and all my aunts and that would light their hair on fire and get out of there because everything was swearing, and it was like having Andrew Dice Clay on guitar. It was like, so I doodled with his guitar. So I played bass, and we took lessons, and then got in a band, and then we were playing around, and then I ended up booking the band because our drummer, he got through university. He was older, and he got a job as a music teacher for Leamington High School. Okay. So we lose him. Dennis, we call him Zawad Toboggan. Everyone had a nickname. It was Zawadski, but we called him Zawad Toboggan, Ski Toboggan. Right. But Dennis was great. So Dennis leaves. So, we put an ad in the paper of the Musicians Union, and then we go down to see Mr. Adams. Carm Adams was the president of the union. And we put in an ad, and we get all these, interview a bunch of the bands. And we had this one drummer we just fell in love with him right off the bat. It was Pootie, had a funny name, Pootie Smith. He was from Detroit, but he had a girlfriend in Windsor, so it wouldn't be hard to. But he could sing, and he was a funk player.
Okay.
And all the bar owners cared about back then was the dance floor packed. Dance floor packed, you got a job forever.
Right.
Well, you put a funk drummer, and our guitar player was from Toronto, and he liked all the British blues guys. So we had a bluesy rock guitar player and a funk drummer, and we had 3-part harmonies, and we went. Well, we had a different sound only because of Pootie.
Right.
But when our agent found out that he was black, he quit us because there's just no way. This is maybe 73, 5-6 years after the riots in Detroit.
Okay.
They thought all the brothers were going to come over from Detroit and it was going to be burned down. Like, really? But, so they voted and I lost and I had to go out and sell the band. So, I started booking the bands and I got double pay. I was getting paid the agent fee plus playing and singing and it was perfect.
Right.
And I got pretty good at it. And then other bands would come and it was just organic, learn by burn, this didn't work, that didn't work. And when I got into university, and then when I got through university, I went hustling for a job, Xerox and go to Toronto for interviews and all that crap. And I was making more money part-time, so I just said, why don't I just do this full-time? I'm loving it,
Right.
Music was kind of in your blood, and then I just kept at it, and just swinging the bat and hitting some over the fence and striking out a whole bunch.
So what was your musical career like? Because I know eventually you just went full-time promoter, but talk to me about like your musical career.
Well, we played around. We played London sometimes, but mainly around Windsor. Windsor was so great back then because you had about 8 or 10 clubs. You could work 6 nights a week.
That's kind of what I hear about the scene back in those days. That
it was today. The kids today. I mean, to work 6 nights a week, you got to put on 800 miles on your van because you got to do Windsor and London and kitchen. It's so hard for the kids today. It's unbelievable. Right. We could just go from the Lido to the Riv to the Canada Tavern to Jason's. There was 20 places to work. Chatham had a couple hot clubs. London had a whole bunch. Man, you wouldn't put 20 miles on your car and you'd have another gig, But then later on, you find out when I was starting to book bands and I started seeing touring bands, I went, you think you're good? Just watch that. You just go, forget about it.
Yeah.
They're just so good. When you get a pro band versus, we thought we were a good band, and I guess we were, but then you see certain guys, just like my trumpet players, he was just so good, you just went, forget it. You could practice your whole life, you won't be half as good as that guy.
Right.
Find something else. Don't pick on the toughest guy in the bar.
Right.
You're going to get your ass whooped, right?
Yeah.
So and I had fun at it, and just went, year after year, just build it up.
And it just became promotion.
And then got in the nightclub business, and and when I was in the nightclub business, I was still booking some bands because you get to know the different club owners, and you get a call from Toronto, you got anything coming through? And I said, yeah, Three Dog Night's coming through, so you call this guy and get that guy and a string of dates. So you go Windsor and Toronto and Montreal and Halifax, and so you do a couple tours, and now the agents are calling you. So I was kind of the go-to guy in Canada, and I had a goofy last name, so they'd always remember it.
Right.
So I was lucky being in Windsor, because Windsor was known for one thing, CKLW.
Right.
And the 351 Ford Windsor. Because it had the name Windsor on it, right? So to the motorheads, they knew Plant 3 was cranking out all the big, hot Hemi cars. So the motorheads knew Windsor, and the music industry, and you get on the phone, how's Rosalie doing? Because she was the most famous program director in the world.
Right.
Just from a little girl from Windsor, from Riverside, Ontario, and she was famous around the planet.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, so what's your first club that you opened in Windsor?
Danny's. It was the old Bellevue. Right. And that was kind of a fluke. A lawyer buddy calls me up and says, I got 3 guys, a lawyer, accountant, and a professional bar owner. His dad ran some bar up in Blenheim. He had the Blenheim Hotel or whatever. And they needed a music guy. And I knew the Bellevue because I used to book the odd show in there. In fact, I did the James Cotton show in the Bellevue the night that. You ever see the movie Taxi Driver with De Niro?
Yeah.
Talking to me.
Yeah.
That guy was in the bar that night. And outside, first 2 bikers, pop, double murder.
Explain that to me. I don't understand. What that guy was.
You know, the crazy De Niro was acting out some fantasy of a guy that wrote it down in a script.
Okay.
But in real life, that guy was in the bar. His sister had been hurt by two bikers, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
And this guy went taxi driver. And for 2 years, he was planning. And that night, he showed up, and he picked the first two bikers out in the parking lot and took them out.
And that was the first.
Well, that's when it's funny, that's when I knew the Bellevue, because I used to book some bands there.
Right.
And the guy that owned it was from Brantford, so my dad was a big star in Brantford or whatever. So 2 years later, they had an offer on the Bellevue. So you buy, it's like real estate's cheapest when there's blood in the streets.
Right.
Well, there was blood in the parking lot, and it was 2 years later, but still, that was a black cloud that will never go away, maybe.
Okay.
So we got in, renovated the place, and started doing. And I told the guys, I said, we got to come out like a hurricane, because it's great. I used to love that room. It was 800-900 seats, and it sounds. Some rooms just you walk in and going, this place is made for music. I mean, and the Bellevue was made. They had the stage on the wrong end. We put it on the long end, brought in all the big Detroit acts and a bunch of national acts. But we had to come out of the chute really hot to break that stigma of the double murder 2 years before.
Right.
Now, if it was 10 years before, everyone would forget. But 2 years is like yesterday.
Right.
And we had a good run, and that was the story that I showed you, that picture with Steve Marriott.
Right.
The best show I ever did and the worst show I ever did was at the old Danny's.
Talk about it.
Well, it was our third. We were maybe 3 or 4 months old. We started off with Mitch Ryder, and then we had Rare Earth, and I think I brought in Iggy Pop, But we had to hit them with so many shows just to get credibility, and fast. So I get a phone call. It was one of these, Boomer, Green. I got Steve Marriott and Humble Pie in Chicago in 3 weeks. Come on down. The room's on me. I'm inviting the top 40 or 50 promoters in North America. Here's the deal: 20 grand if you take one night, 15 grand if you take 2 nights. You can't take more than 2 nights. What is it? And I'm on the phone going, what? They're like, when do you have to know? Like now, like right now, or I'm hanging up on you. I said, okay, I'll take 2 shows. I just said 2, and I'm sitting there going, how are we going to? I just spent 50 grand of the partner's money, between the show and the hotels and the.
Right.
But I figured I'd get one of my buddies in Toronto, so we booked a show. Everything's great. Put it on sale, sells out in like a week, just like instant. And then a month later, 6 weeks later, Boomer, Green, Steve's sick. He's going to be 2 or 3 weeks off his throat. We're going to put the show off a couple months. Okay, so you get cancellations and stuff in the business. And I'm sitting there going, I'm getting a little bit nervous, and the partners are really getting nervous because they don't know the music industry.
Right.
It's like the racetrack business, You go to see your favorite horse, and it's scratched in the 4th race.
You already put money down on this at this point?
50, oh yeah.
50% up front kind of thing?
So, but when I went, but it was funny, I learned this from my dad, my aunts and uncles and that. Every time they went to meet somewhere, they always brought gifts. So when I went down to see, when I get the phone call, before we were going to Chicago, I called up my aunt. My aunt worked, she was a Brit, British War bride. My uncle met her over in England, and she worked for the Canadian Council. So I called her up and I said, what should I bring? What should I buy these British boys? And she starts laughing. She says, get them some Newcastle Brown. And I'm going like, why? She said, Ted, it's in the song. Newcastle Brown will surely knock you down 30 days in the hole. And I start laughing because I'm thinking my aunt, she's like 50 something, and she's cool because she knows humble pie. And because she didn't have I don't even think she had a radio in the house.
Right.
But I'm so proud of my aunt because she's cool. Now she's the cool rock and roll aunt.
Right.
Well, it turns out Steve's aunt and her went to school together. Like the world is so crazy, stupidly small sometimes. So she says, go pick up. She had a distributor she knew, and so on my way to Chicago, I pick up a couple cases of Newcastle Brown. Get to Chicago. Pull in a fancy hotel, the guy with the gloves and everything opens up the car door. I mean, this isn't just a Motel 6 here. I mean, it's a beauty. And this promoter was smart. Boy, he had us all on a hook. So we go to the show, and it's 3,000 seat, beautiful theater, sold out, backstage, dinner for all these promoters. And back then, they didn't have any conventions, Billboard magazine, and everything, you knew everyone by their voice. And it was funny when you'd ever meet him, you'd think, oh, he's probably a big guy and he's a little guy. And this guy always got a squeaky little voice. He's probably a tiny little guy and he's like the size of a linebacker. You can't really tell on the phone what someone looks like. You used to play this Mr. Potato Man in your head, like, what do they look like, right?
Right.
So everyone's got a minute or two with Steve. So I come in and drop the case of Newcastle Brown. Well, the guy gets up and hugs me. I'm going, okay. And they're little guys. All those Brits, Bill Wyman, they're tiny. My daughter's like tiny, and they're as small as she is. They're
Right.
little guys, So I said, Steve, my aunt knew your aunt, went to school with your aunt, and blah, 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 blah. And there's only 3 Canadians in the room, so a Canadian who brought me the booze, and he's got that stupid last name, Boomer. Like,
Right.
That's what you call your dog. That's a real name. So it kind of rings with your head, right? And Windsor being a British name,
Right.
it's easy for a Brit to think Windsor. Oh, okay. So we come back home, get the phone call, it's rescheduled. Then about 6 weeks later, again, phone call, Dad, okay, the show's going on, but we need more money. Right? So it's been 2 cancellations, or reschedules, and now he wants more money. And I make up some BS story, and I hang up the phone because now it's like, I'm smelling, you get that itchy feeling like when you put up insulation. Then the phone rings about 10 minutes later from a guy in Detroit, big club in Detroit. Boomer, I need $1,000. Why, Ron? I got 7 guys. I need 3 more grand. We're taking this guy out. I'm going, like, I just got in this business to make a few bucks because I love music. And I give him, I said, Ron, my dad, my godfather was the deputy chief of police in Windsor. My cousin runs the Alberta RCMP. Like, all my dad's buddies are cops. If I put in $1,000 and some guy goes swimming, I mean, they'll kill me before the judge does. So I don't know what the hell to do. Now, this thing is getting, like, beyond belief. And I'm scared because they're not taking, I can't give them their money back. It's like they got a winning lottery ticket. Right. And now this show is, it's a scam. So I talked to the guy in Detroit. I said, well, what are we going to do? He said, we tried the FBI. It's not enough money. They're not going to do anything. Like, it was only $700,000 or $800,000, and he duped off of everyone. I went, okay. So I called my old man and said, got to have lunch. I don't know what to do. So I tell him the story. He says, come on, let's go. So we go down Riverside Drive, go to the RCMP detachment. The officer there does a police report, and he says, okay, I'll kick it up to Ottawa, and hopefully they'll kick it off to Washington, and maybe the FBI will do something. I said, Dad, that's great. I don't care if the guy goes to jail. How the hell do I... They're going to burn down the bar. They've already had a double murder 2 years before. I mean, this is the Titanic taking on water. Yeah. And I don't, you never go against the crowd because they can turn on you like that. Right. So the old man says, well, you told me that Aunt Joan knows this rock guy's aunt. Get Aunt Joan on it. So tell Aunt Joan. She calls the Canadian consulate in London, England, gets a phone number on her old friend from 30 years before. La-di-da-di-da. Next thing you know, I'm on the phone the next day with her, and she says, I talked to Steve, he's going to be at this bar in England. The bars are all offices. Everyone does business in the pub, right? Yeah. So Steve's playing darts on this night. So she says, call this number. Jacques, the owner, he's the bartender, and he'll get Steve there. I call around 7 o'clock. So I call up, and Jacques. Yep. Oh, Steve, it's the Canadians calling. So I hand the phone over, and I tell Steve who I am. I know the guy, my aunt, Newcastle Brown. And, oh, yeah, I remember you. I said, Steve, you're screwed. I'm screwed. They're burning down my bar, and you won't work the States again. You just burned 50 of the top promoters in the United States, and you don't even know about it. There was no tour. This was a scam. The tour was a scam. This whole thing was a Bernie Madoff. So I said, Steve, we got to put this together for you, and I don't want people to die for me. Right. So I said, who do you trust the most? Well, the president of his record company. He calls him. I call the next day. He calls the New York office, puts 2 or 3 guys on it. I remember 3 or 4 of the guys that are there. I know the Donald K. Donald guys in Quebec, and I know the guy in Detroit, of course, and I knew the Belkin brothers in Cleveland. They ran. So I knew 4 or 5, but the bigger boys, because I was a small potato amongst these giants. Right. And they put the whole tour together. Everything's good. Put it all back together. Reschedule the date again.
So wait a second. The manager set this up as a scam?
Yes.
And then
He blew
and
it all up his nose. The guy had the worst drug thing in the world.
okay.
Right? So he's out of Florida.
So he sets up this entire tour. It's all fucking bullshit. You make a phone call, all of a sudden the bullshit tour is now an actual tour.
Because of my aunt. Like, this is how, like, you know, if people don't believe things don't happen for a reason.
Right.
My whole life is just it's everything you thought should work didn't, and out of the blue there's angels that tap you on the shoulder. You go, how the goonie goo goo? How'd that happen?
So here's the thing. I want to you and I know this, and anybody that's watching this, I'm guessing for the most part has some idea in their head about you. You're a name that, like I said at the very beginning of this, my entire journey through, talking to everybody about the different levels of Windsor music and just music in Canada and music in general, your name has come up. And I'm sure I'm not saying anything to you that you aren't aware of, but people have a varied viewpoint of who you are. And I think the beauty of it is I don't even have to lay it out. You've pretty much already laid it out in the stories that you've told. And that's your entire sort of method, your entire operational background, going back apparently right back to your dad's original days, comes from a world of just get it the fuck done and the
Chaos.
rest doesn't matter.
Chaos. Insanity.
So talk to me about, because you do know, and however it comes from wherever it is, you do know that there's a group of people in Windsor that look at you as, I mean, a god is maybe playing it up a little bit, but they look at you as a fucking hero for sure. There's another group of people that look at you as the exact opposite of that,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Talk to me about, and not even, it can be specifics if you want, but just talk to me about that dynamic, because it's not something you're unaware of.
Well, when you're the first one in the pool, if you're out above if you're a lone wolf, you're gonna get picked off.
Mm-hmm.
Jealousy, greed, competitors want to take you out. I mean, we had a fight. When we got Oled Avenue to close Oled Avenue, the cops and the firemen, I thought they wanted to take me behind the barn and put a whooping on me because how dare you? This is insane. Like, I didn't know. They got mad. They were upset. The fire department go, what if the Canada building starts on fire? I said, well, bring the truck up. People will move. Like, you can hear that big diesel Rolls Royce coming from 3 blocks away. Like,
right.
You think people are stupid? But when you're grinding and trying to change things, you rub people wrong sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of I'm there to feed my family, not to run for city council.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is it's the rubbing people the wrong way doesn't bother you.
Well, you don't like doing it, but if you're fighting, you gotta. Hey, I'm sure Larry Holmes didn't like beating up on Muhammad Ali the last fight. He's looking at, if you watch that fight, he's looking at the ref going, it's like beating up your dad.
Right.
Like, he didn't want to be there, but he was the champ and he's making the money. But would you please stop the fight? I'm fighting the greatest fighter of all time, and he's an old man. And I don't, he probably felt bad being the guy that put a beating on Muhammad.
So, but talk to me about your history in Windsor a little bit when it comes to this sort of dichotomy, the way people view you, because it is interesting. I've had conversations with people who speak of you with nothing less than pure reverie. That talk about your history. The things that you're responsible for in the city, and I mean, we can list them off, like the Riverfront Plaza for one. The Bluesfest was something that you started originally. There's a number, the bar, all the bars that you were involved in, that sort of thing. And when you talk to people like Dusty, for example, you know what I mean? Those guys will talk about the things that you're responsible for, the things that you went out of your way for. They'll talk about you in a way like soldiers talk about a general, kind of a metaphor that you brought up earlier. And at the same time, you've got the other side of the business, right? Where I've talked to people who've been on the other side of business dealings with you, who came out not feeling so good. And I wonder if you have a perspective on that, or if there's anything you want to talk about in that vein.
You know, you look back, I don't, you know, I mean, you had to be tough in business. I learned after a while, like in the early days, you know, you could teach, you know, I learned this later on, maybe too late, but sometimes you get too good a deal, it's not a good deal. Like if you beat someone up too much on the price, you got to leave enough, you know, meat on the bones, you know. And when you're starting out and money's tight, you grind every deal, and sometimes you grind people a little too hard, and they're not happy with it. They don't tell you,
Right.
but you learn that, and that's, you know, and after a while you learn that. We had, when we started California, so we had our first year, because that same with the Bellevue, it had 7 or 8 owners. Everyone thought it was a dead dog, but historically it was the #2 club in Windsor's history, because we had the Elmo Casino and we had the Metropole, and the Metropole was, we branded it as Californians.
Okay.
And when we got in there, you know, money was tight, and I remember the first year, because it's right off of Dugout Road, so all the Dugout kids thought it was their place, and you don't mess with Dugout Road. So after a year of fighting, I mean, like really fighting, like my wife used to go, she had a pair of pliers behind the bar, pulling teeth on my brother's knuckles. And I mean, but we knew it was a territorial thing. And after a while, we turned the guys around, and they became our buddies, but boy, we had to fight our way through that. And in the early days, we never had Windsor Police on the door. I remember we did this one big show. It was a big fundraiser for, it was We Are the World, you know, when they did all the songs. The States did one, what's his name from England started it.
Oh, right.
And Canada, we had, David Foster did the Canadian version. So we did this big fundraiser. They did 10 across the country, and Bruce Allen, he was the biggest promoter in Canada. He had PTO, Michael Bublé. I mean, he's the guy. And his wife was running the shows, this fundraising thing. So we did the big fundraiser. We brought beach volleyball into Windsor, and we had a big thing going with that. So we had this whole day affair fundraiser, and it was right during a city council thing. I don't know who was running. Al Santin was running against Dave Burr, and we had all the councilors there, and we brought in some rock stars, and we had this big volleyball thing and raising money. And at nighttime, we had a big raffle. I think we raised 48. We got the award for raising the most in it, 48 grand or something. We had this raffle that raised 25 grand, and the winner gets backstage passes to Philadelphia, you know, dinner with Bruce Springsteen. I mean, it was like the biggest prize in rock and roll.
Oh shit.
Well, you think everything's perfect, right? Then they draw. I remember I think we had CKWW or what. The disc jockey pulls the ticket, and this girl from Mount Clemens, Michigan, wins it. And there's about 40 or 50 bad guys in the room, and they go nuts. And we have this brawl. I mean, here at 11 o'clock, we're heroes, and at 12 o'clock, we're fighting for it was the worst brawl I think we ever had. I mean, thank God all the bigwigs were gone, all the lawyers and doctors and Indian chiefs and all the city councilors were out of there by about 6 o'clock. And at midnight, the cops are there, the ambulance is there, we're fighting like crazy. And then after that, a cop buddy of ours came to us and said, I said, why are they always on our ass? Because if you got a hot bar, and we had the hottest bar, we were #2 in Canada for a while. If you got a hot bar, and back in 84, Windsor had marijuana. Jason's opened up, French girls, via train, snow everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
We went like a windshield wiper. And bars, I mean, one thing to slap a guy around who's had too much whiskey. You jack up on the new stuff.
Right.
All of a sudden, all the bouncers go, what's with these people? Well, and then the RCMP are involved. So a cop buddy says, you guys don't have cops. They're looking at you like, what are you doing? We're making money on beer. We're not in the drug business.
Right.
We used to waterboard drug dealers in the bathroom. I don't care if you're selling. Go down to Walkerville High School and sell drugs, but not on this property. We're in the beer business.
Right.
And there's bad guys attached to that, really bad guys. So best thing we ever did, he hooks us up with Windsor Police. We go from 0 to hero. Because if you're on the outside, if you're a lone wolf, they're looking at you going, what's he doing? Is he a front man for the mob? Is he doing that? I mean, I'm not Italian, you know, like, but that's how, but once you got him in there, and it was the smartest thing we ever did, because I'm thinking like a cheapskate. I paid $40 an hour. I can have 4 of the best bouncers in town for one.
Right.
But it wasn't that. It was politics.
Yeah.
And then when you get them on your side, then all of a sudden all the bad guys don't come anywhere near you because you got the badge and the gun there.
Right.
They don't want. Oh, they'll go to the next place that doesn't have a cop,
Right.
and they'll do what they're doing because drugs.
How long did you have Californians?
9 years.
9 years. And Californians came after Danny's, right?
Yeah.
So you had already had all the incident with the bikers and stuff and all of that. Because did you want to talk about that here, or because we talked about it before? It doesn't have to get into the details, but there was some publicly bad shit that went down at one of your clubs, right?
We got robbed at Danny's.
Yeah.
I got away. I got lucky.
Yeah.
But my wife and 3 of my waitresses, tied up. I got away. Police come down. Perfect takedown. The best. No one got hurt. 2 guys. So the next day I got to go to court. So there was a guy. They had a lookout outside, and he was looking towards the bridge, and I gave him the best Gordie Howe I've ever done. And then I ran to a neighbor. Called the police. They came down. Everything was settled. I thought that was just round 1. Round 2, I go down to the courtroom to see. I couldn't witness. The guy was about my height, 6'1", leather jacket, ponytail, looking that way. I mean, that just described about 5 million guys, right? And I'm walking up the stairs, and this guy, big biker guy, Boomer, you're a dead man. Never saw this guy in my life. Go back home. Go back to the club, and I'm like, this is weird. And I'm watching CBC because it happened on a Sunday, so on a Monday, and I remember and due to the robbery at Danny's, police uncovered the largest drug bust in Windsor's history. And I go, well, the guy that robbed us, his brother was the vice president they ran the country. $1.5 million. Uh-oh. Mm-hmm. So I tried to get into witness protection, this and that. But thank God my dad was alive. And my dad and my brother walked right into the clubhouse and
took care of it.
What are we going to do, boys? My dad asked him one question. Was this a sanctioned blah, blah, blah robbery? And they didn't say anything. He said, well, I'll take your silence as no. So he said, you have an internal problem here. My son was just lucky and got away, but maybe you should not leave your stash with someone you can't trust. Robbing a bar for $6,000 and losing $1.5 million is not a good investment. So that got us, that scared the living bejesus out of, because, and it's funny, the guys, later on in life, one of the guys in that room who probably kept me alive, we did him a favor, lent him some money, and he did us another favor by stopping another robbery because he felt bad about what he did. And you don't say there's honor amongst thieves, but it's crazy stuff. This stuff is like, I'm telling it now, and it's 30, 40 years ago, and it sounds, it's like, it's surreal. It's like...
It was a different world then, though, right?
Windsor, in 1977, the bikers blew up the Windsor police garage. Like, think about that.
Tell me about that story. I don't know that story.
They blew it up. Someone put a car in there and it blew up.
And that's the environment this is all going down.
We had 17 murders in Windsor about 1976. All bad guys.
Right.
But then police were working out and they got a lot of muscles. And in the 80s, they came in like a storm and cleaned it all up. But it took a while.
Right.
Windsor's a border town. We had the Underground Railroad going this way, and we had the other Underground Railroad. Black hash doesn't come from Detroit; it comes from Montreal.
Right.
And we were and you see it today.
Yeah.
Windsor's a border town, and that's why we have the best boxers in the country, and all the tough guys in NHL, Bugner and Probert and Domi. It's not a fluke. We had two. The only city in Canada that had two. British Commonwealth champs, Walls in the 50 and Borshuk in the 40s.
It's funny because we're coming up on an hour already, and we typically keep these interviews or conversations or whatever in around an hour. And I've said it a couple of times because I know this. Our first meeting together was supposed to be about an hour-long meeting, and we sat there for about 4 hours. And you have such an interesting and tremendous history in the city. And there's a lot of things. This is almost like the interview I had with Dusty, where at the end of it, Dusty looked at me and says, we didn't even talk about anything in my career. But maybe before we close it out, do you have a perspective on what entertainment is in our area these days versus what it was back in the day you were dealing with it full time?
Yeah, well, it's not only here, but unless you're in a major city like Austin or Orlando, LA or whatever, the music scene, there's a lot of good stuff that came from the internet. But live performance without, I mean, you see all these shows with all the stars and being judged and all that. I mean, I don't even watch them because you can't manufacture an artist. You just can't. You don't become a master plumber just by going to St. Clair for 2 years and then laying a bit of pipe. I mean, there's no art. Like Justin Bieber, like one of the biggest guys in the world, he made it off of YouTube. Like, how is that possible? It's there's no places. If there's no hockey rinks, there's no hockey players.
Right.
And if there's no nightclubs, and the bar business has been just ravaged. I mean, there's so few places there's singles, duos, and maybe if you're lucky, one or two places in each town to play. And if you got an indie place, those poor indie bands are playing one night a week, and they're, by the time they're done, they're eating crackers and cheese. They don't have enough money. It's so expensive to tour, especially in Canada. It's such a big country, and it goes east-west. I mean, it's, you can on one tank of gas in the States, you can do 3 states. In Canada, you're not even halfway out of Ontario.
Well, you've spent your whole career kind of dealing with like the upper echelons of what is the Canadian music industry and the U.S. music industry. And I mean, I don't think it's any secret that the industry itself kind of fucking blew it through the 2000s.
Well, yeah. You know what? You know when it all changed? It's funny. Everyone wants to know blame on why why is Sears going down, and why is GE having trouble? Everything. I think the reason that the industry got into so much trouble, in the hospitality industry and everything, because it's all tied in with music, is when they changed the laws. They used to have a law that you could only own 7 radio stations and 777 rule. You could have 7 newspapers, 7 radio stations, and 7 TV stations. And when 3 or 4 brought it all together, now you can't get to the people. I made my living knowing the program directors in Detroit. That was, right. And it was kind of a fluke. I just knew them because I knew some of the guys in the Silver Bullet Band and Mitch Ryder and these guys. So when I went to Detroit and they had a big thing, and I would just meet them organically, like I'm that Canadian guy, the boomer guy, And back then you could walk in the door with a record, and if you had good ears, you go, this song by this guy, Kim Mitchell, Go for Soda, that thing's a hit.
Let's be honest, you had to have a little more than just the record. There's also a bag that you usually came around with.
Well, you know what? Well, yeah, you know what? That's true. That was true in Toronto.
Yeah.
Like when Tupac and that died, I knew exactly why.
Yeah.
They were a laundromat for the drug business.
Right.
And I saw it in Toronto because I remember going to parties in Toronto back in the 80s. You go to a party, and they had bowls and bowls of stuff all over the place, and you're going. And then the vice president of this record company and that record company, and then you find out that this band was financed by that guy over there. Why is everyone kissing this guy? He's not even in the business. No one even knows who he is. Well, the record companies knew because it was his money funding it.
Gotcha.
It was a laundromat. Mm-hmm. And I think going back to the 50s, it was payola.
Right.
So the music business always had that.
It's always kind of,
It had that dirty side to it. I mean, it wasn't always talent that made it. You needed talent. George Chavello could have been the heavyweight champ, but he was in Canada. He wasn't connected to get to where, a lot of it is who's behind you.
Right.
And hopefully it's pure talent that gets you there. That's why Seeger made it, 10 years of playing every bar in the world. Mm-hmm. He went from vans to airplanes. You usually go van, then tour bus, and airplane. They skipped that after Live Bullet screwed up the whole formula.
Right.
Because he went off like a rocket.
That had a lot to do with Rosalie, too, right? Rosalie was behind a lot of the stuff with Bob.
He wrote a song about it because he couldn't get played on CKLW. He wrote Rosalie, You Got the Power, You Got the Power, everyone's favorite little record machine. Bob was a little too edgy for CK.
Yeah.
And CK was, and they were the biggest in the world, CKLW.
Yeah.
The Wolfman Jack movie should have been really, it was the same thing. They had the big station in Mexico.
Right.
We had CK. And it was, the industry, we always had better musicians for our size than any other city. because
So that's a thing I've been preaching now for 3 years. That's not bullshit, right? That's a long term.
Ricky Genesis. Rick was a great sax player. We just lost Ricky about a year ago. When we were in high school, Rick used to go over and play gigs in Detroit with the Temps and the Tops, and that if there was someone sick or whatever,
Right.
he could step right in. And there was a lot of Ricky Genesis out there. You know, we had some great. I mean, our local bands were way better than. I mean, not as good as Toronto, but better than London, better than Ottawa, better than Quebec City,
Right.
better. Something about Winnipeg. Winnipeg had great players for some reason. I don't know. Winnipeg, I think it's because it's so damn cold that they practice well. But there's certain cities that were really, and Windsor, we're a border city.
Yeah.
So we grew up, I mean, when we were kids, we'd see a limo going by, there's Stevie Wonder, little Stevie Wonder. And the next day, they were all going down to CK with their acetates right off of Hitsville. You know, Rosalie dropped the needle. Oh, not that one. Oh, yeah, that one will be a hit. We took it for granted. We had a TV station, Channel 9. We had a TV station before ABC, NBC, CBN. We had in the 50s.
Wow.
Channel 9 was, we were one of the first licenses in Canada. So the Americans in Detroit grew up on Channel 9 TV.
That's incredible.
So the media had Windsor, I tell everyone, Windsor was the marketing division of Motown Records.
Yeah.
Because if Rosie dropped the needle on Monday, WCNR Keener in Detroit dropped it on Tuesday. By Wednesday, the big stations in Chicago, and by Thursday, it was in LA and New York, on one play from Rosalie Tremblay, because they were all watching her.
The other thing people don't realize, and I saw this from watching one of the Big 8 documentaries or whatever, but like now it's sort of considered like cheeseball, you know, whatever. But the stereotypical like cheeseball disc jockey whatever was born out of CKLW. Most people don't even realize
it
that.
It was really the early MTV.
Yeah.
Without the camera.
Yeah.
It was drama. I mean, it wasn't like two guys got hit by a train.
Right.
It would be Byron Nelson, whatever. 2 kids aren't going to the prom this year. I mean, it was like a Howard Stern.
Yep.
It was crazy.
That's awesome.
It was drama. It was entertainment. The jocks were bigger. I remember we used to bring over Dick the Bruiser, WRF and WLZ. You bring Art Penhall. I used to bring over the show. Didn't matter who you played. You could charge a $5 cover for Art, because Art was the guy, baby. You know, and he had
right.
And we gave out bumper stickers, and I had a visit from the RCMP because we gave out 10,000 bumper stickers. Guess where all the bumper stickers were put? On every mailbox in Essex County, and that's like it sounds like a good idea,
right?
Until the horsemen knock on the door, going, "No more giving out bumper stickers," and you go, "Goody goo!" Like you try something good and it blows up in your face. I thought it was funny, but I didn't laugh in front of the RCMP.
You seem to have made a hell of a career out of it, though.
Well, you just do what you do and be yourself, and you know, I'm proud that. You know, I never went bankrupt, and a lot of people have in the business. Never bounced a check, and you know, other than that, you know, that's all you can do. But it's a crazy game. It's more normal now, but back then, and the thing is, it was the school of hard knocks, or I call it learn by burn.
A little Wild West action.
Yeah, you didn't know how to do something, so you just did it. And then if it blew up in your face, you just note to self, don't do that again. You know. But I mean, I got to tell you the story. I'll finish the one I started with,
right.
Steve Marriott. Because
yes. Oh yeah.
This is really the story of Windsor, Ontario.
Okay.
And this is why. I mean, I've been away from Windsor for 6 years next week. My kids are still there now. But this is Windsor, and I've traveled all over Canada. When they find out you're from Windsor, they either buy you a drink or move 3 stools down.
Yep.
Because Windsor, Hamilton, Thunder Bay, Halifax, tough towns. You know, I mean, you got to work hard to work in the Ford. Mm-hmm. The Ford Foundry.
The Foundry,
you got arms on you like this. You know, that's tough jobs. You know, so the Steve Marriott thing, we finally put the tour together, and it's all set. So he's in Syracuse on a Thursday night. He's in Windsor on the Friday, and at my buddy's place in Toronto on a Saturday. So he's supposed to be in around 3 o'clock. So it's about getting on 3, and I'm getting a little anxious, you know, because this whole thing has been a nightmare. By the time the show's coming, I don't care if we want to make money or I don't care. I just don't want the place to burn down. That was the goal.
Right.
Because it was just the craziest ride I've ever seen. So I get a phone call at 3:30. It's Steve. He's in Buffalo. Steve, you're supposed to be in Windsor. Ted, we're in here. Little diner. Gus, Greek Gus. He had a diner right by the airport. Well, their bus blew up, and it's in Atlanta. So the last couple of gigs, they're puddle jumping, renting planes. So all they got is their guitar in their hand. They haven't shaved for 3 days. They smell it's like a goat farm. And they're sitting in this little diner. So I get on the phone with Gus. Gus, could you keep the line open? This is an emergency. Don't worry. I take care of the British boys. Don't worry. I got them. So I said, Steve, don't move. I don't know what I'm going to do. Because he's thinking Windsor, so just send a driver.
Right.
It's 4 hours there,
The
4
airport
hours
is
back.
Yeah.
And I got guys in Toronto, but by the time they get there, you'll be here at 1:30. The bar's on fire.
Yeah.
There won't be a bar.
Right.
So I hang up the phone, and a buddy of mine just walks in the door. He's in his last year of law, Danny. I won't use last names. And I said, I don't know what to do. He said, give me the phone. So we'll fly him in. I'm not thinking about flights.
Right.
I'm still thinking about that SOB that burned me for 10 grand down in Florida, and they want to whack them. And
right.
I mean, the whole drama by then. It's like, so call down Windsor Airport, the flying club. No, we don't have our planes on. It was a mail plane. It was on Pelion. It needed some work, but he gives him a name of a guy in London. So we call up London. Yeah, we got a plane. Okay, here's the tail number of the plane. I'll be in Buffalo at 7:30. Meet me at Willow Run in Detroit at the Willow Run Airport. I'll be there 9:15. I need $3,000 US. I won't even shut the engines off. You hand the money through the window, and I'll shut the motors off and let the bricks out. Other than that, they're in London. They're your problem. I said, thank you, sir. Thank you. So now I got a plane. Well, it's now 4 o'clock. The banks are closed. We got about $400 in them. And I'm at the bar, and I'm telling my wife Louise's sister, I said, I don't know what to do. I need $3,000 US. So she hands me a hat. Just grabs a hat. She says, pass the hat. I go, what? And my head's going like a million miles an hour. Pass the what? So she puts in $30 and grabs a napkin. I owe you. Sign this, Ted. Okay. So then my lawyer buddy, he's got $50 or $100 in his pocket, and I got like 120 on me. And then the guy beside me, and we've only been open 4 months, so there's about 8-10 guys, 4 workers, Hiram Walker.
Yeah.
So Bob, I knew Bob. Him and Sammy at the end. I knew 2 out of the 8 or 9 guys. Bob he puts in 400. So I'm writing IOUs on napkins. So, and he says, okay, guys, buck up. And next thing you know, I got $3,500.
Holy shit.
With IOUs. So now I'm going, now I need US money. So I call up my old man. He
yeah, because you can't just go to the thing.
So he runs down, and he calls his buddy at my old man knew everyone, right at the racetrack. He goes down to Windsor racetrack, gets the money. Now we got the US money. Now I'm going, how am I going to get 6 guys? Now I need a vehicle. I got an Olds 442. I got 4 in it, 3 and me. So Bobby or whatever says to one of the guys, hey, you got that big Lincoln. He just bought a brand new Lincoln town car. It's like 5 bodies in the trunk.
Right. So
next thing you know, I give him my beat up 442 for this, and it had 1,000 miles on it. He just says, no, don't bend it. So I got a plane, I got the money, and I got a Lincoln town car, black. It was like a limo, a mafia car, right? So I get over the Willow Run Airport, and I get all the boys in the thing. And I'm driving through the tunnel, and there's always and things are moving. You're just working on adrenaline, and you're sitting there going, there's something wrong. I don't know, everything's good. Oh, this is perfect. There's something wrong. I pull up to the customs, and my stomach is right. I don't have any paperwork. It's all at the Canadian Consulate in Buffalo. Mm. Now, how am I going to get through the border? We're this close to the finish line. So my old man always said, don't lie, tell the truth, and ask for help. That was his motto. So I pull up there, citizenship, Canadian, and 6 Brits. And it smells like a men's locker room there. And none of the guys have shaved in 3 days.
Right.
And I said, officer, this is Steve Marriott, and all the paperwork's, and I'm like hyperventilating. All the paperwork, it's in Buffalo. I'm telling the truth. I swear to God, I'll sign anything. Just let him in the border. The bar's going to burn down. Oh my God. And he's looking at me going, you're right. This is the biggest crock of shit I've ever heard. It's got to be true. So he says, so the customs guy was just unbelievable. He says, which one of you guys is Steve? So Steve popped his head up over my shoulder. He says, sing that first part of 30 Days in the Hole. So he goes 2, 3, 4, and they sing 30 Days in the Hole. The hair in the back of my neck standing up. And he looks at Steve, he looks at me, goes, yep, that's Steve Barrett.
Holy shit.
So he says, have a good show, guys. And I'm going, I says, officer, when are you off work? Well, our shift's over at 11 or whatever. I said, bring them all. Bring the whole shift. Just badge us at the door. Come on in. You have no idea. You saved lives today. Like, he thought it was bully. But I believe in my heart of hearts, that bar was burned to the ground. It would have been a riot because it was cancellation after cancellation after cancellation. No one would take their money back. And Steve's this close, and he let us through. And that picture there is the customs guy. It's like 2 a.m. My old man sitting there with his guitar singing dirty old, World War II songs. The customs guys were fat, but that's Windsor. Every strangers, it was like roadblock. Someone knocked it down for you. Roadblock. Gus. Next time I was in Buffalo, I bought Gus a case of Ouzo because he saved the day. Everyone was helping. It was like everyone was pulling on the rope, and they didn't have to. And it was the worst show we ever did. It turned out to be the greatest. He did like 6 or 7 encores. And then the sad thing, 5 years later, Steve dies in a house fire. But what a guy, But that's Windsor. Windsor has got the biggest heart of any city anywhere. That wouldn't have happened. Stranger guy ain't lending you $500. And they were just throwing money at me.
That's hilarious. Ted, it's been a pleasure.
That was fun.
I'm sure we could do this 9 or 10 more times.
Well, thanks for coming all the way. Great,
thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to.
You got to put Lily on the. Lily, get over here.
She's all over it. I promise you. Oh yeah, she's all over it.
My daughters would like to see her on TV.
Okay, I love Lily. All right, thanks, folks, for hanging out with us for this extended episode. Ted, thank you so much.
It was fun.
All right, folks, that'll do it for this episode of the AVB Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to go down and click on the subscribe button to make sure that you can continue seeing our episodes as we put them out. We do a lot of videos, and there's a couple of them here that we hope you'll enjoy. There's one up there that we think you might like, and of course, there's one of our playlists down there for you. Make sure you say hello to some of our sponsors in the links down below while you're there, and of course, you can find links there to today's guest and all of our other social media. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.